With the launch of the GTX 1080, all of the different manufacturers are attempting to differentiate their cards from one another in terms of cooling, lighting, and various other feature sets. Galax is no different, implementing a few new elements to their EXOC lineup with their GTX 1080. Thanks to Wootware, I have one for review, so let's see what this card has to offer. I want to start off this review with my frustrations with this card and get them out of the way up front so that I can end this video on a positive note. So I'm going to put on my grumpy face and go through all of my grievances. But just note that the next few minutes are just complaints, not a final conclusion. Wait until the end of the video for that. Issue number 1. The dual 100mm fans on this card never turn off. They are at a minimum of 43% no matter what. Many other manufacturers have implemented a fan off mode for when the card is below 60 or 65 degrees Celsius. Why Galax couldn't do this as well is a bit of a mystery to me. No matter what your system is doing, idle or load, there is always fan noise from this card. And while on the subject of the fans, they actually had the worst cooling performance out of any aftermarket Pascal card that I've tested thus far, hitting a max of 77 degrees under sustained gaming load on the default fan curve. Issue number 2. The LEDs on the fans are separate from the LEDs in the GeForce GTX logo and can't be controlled by Galax's new Extreme Tuner Plus application. No matter what, the LEDs on the fans are always on and always red, which limits the color coordination that you can implement with the card. It would have made more sense for Galax to leave these LEDs out altogether. Issue number 3. This is about Galax's software, Extreme Tuner Plus. It's mostly functional, providing everything that you would expect with MSI Afterburner, EVGA Precision, or GPU Tweak from ASUS, except for the fact that you can't manually input numbers for the overclock. You can only adjust things via sliders, which leads to less than accurate number adjustments, at least in my experience, and left me wanting to go back to MSI Afterburner every single time. Issue number 4. This may seem nitpicky, but since I'm already in grumpy mode, I'm going to call this out. Galax used 2 different colored PCIe power inputs for the 6-pin and the 8-pin on the top of the card. Why? They did this on the last generation Hall of Fame cards as well. The power inputs on those cards were a different shade of white than the rest of the card. So much about the aesthetic and outer experience of this card seems a bit half implemented by Galax. It seems as if they just added RGB on the side logo because everybody else was doing it. They made their own app just because they could and failed to implement features that most other aftermarket GPUs are coming out with these days. Alright, grumpy mode off. Back to normal. Let's go through what the rest of the card has to offer. It features an all-black aluminum shroud with a black anodized aluminum backplate to create a subtle overall experience. There's the standard Galax large heat pipes, which are cooled by the aforementioned dual 100mm fans. Again, the cooling performance on these was less than stellar compared to other experiences I've had with 1080s. The EXOC 1080 comes with the GTX 1080 standard set of 2,560 CUDA cores, 8GB of GDDR5X memory on a 256-bit bus with outputs of triple DisplayPort 1.3, a single HDMI 2.0, and a DVI-D. The card comes with a base clock of 1,657 MHz and a quoted boost clock of 1,797 MHz. However, my actual experience with GPU Boost 3.0 had the card anywhere from 1873 to 1943 MHz, with the card usually settling in at 1,911 MHz overall during gaming sessions. Now looking at the benchmarks for the out-of-the-box settings for the 1080 EXOC. It performed roughly on par, but slightly less than what I got with the ASUS Strix 1080. The difference in megahertz between those two cards resulted in anywhere from a 1 to 5 FPS difference in all of the games that I tested. The 1080 EXOC is definitely a formidable 4K card, just like its other GTX 1080 brethren. Price per frame rate, the 1080 EXOC provides a compelling argument for being considered over the 1080 Strix, either based on the US pricing of $650 or South African pricing of 12,799 Rand. Now this is typically where I come to a conclusion, but there's some intangibles that this 1080 EXOC offered me that I want to address. I'm not sure if it's the Silicon Lottery or Galax is bidding their chips, but my 1080 EXOC hit some really decent overclocks, the likes of which my Asus Strix didn't even see. I could barely get the Asus card to over 2075 MHz, while this Galax card managed to hit over 2.2 GHz in certain applications and was at a game stable 2100 MHz in all instances. I was able to post some pretty decent HW bot results as well when I was benching this card. The overclocking that I was able to achieve on this card makes me want to beg Wootware to let me keep it. However, without testing on other EXOCs, it's hard for me to bring that into the definitive conclusion on this set of cards as a whole. But I will say that this specific card that I received gave me the best performance that I've seen out of many GTX 1080s so far. And just note that this is a retail sample, not specifically marked for review. Now, conclusion time. It seems like the decision to buy a GTX 1080 comes down to a few things: price, aesthetics, and whether or not you personally overclock. Aesthetically, I've already listed my complaints with the 1080 EXOC, but overall, it's a simple looking card that doesn't aim to wow, but shouldn't detract from your system's appearance either. Price-wise, the EXOC comes in priced at the bottom of the barrel, both in the US and here in South Africa, making it a compelling value choice. That value is increased if you're willing to overclock, because as I've been testing various cards and keeping up with other reviews, it appears that most 1080s should be able to hit around the 2050 MHz mark regardless of branding or price. But if you want the best out of the box experience, then the 1080 EXOC likely isn't for you, as it has slightly lower clocks and performance than competing 1080s. The price is what makes the 1080 EXOC worth discussing, even with its last generation fan technology, less than stellar implementation of LEDs, and lack of color coordination. Overall, it's a 1080 I could recommend buying at its current price. Just note that it's not perfect. And with that conclusion, I'd like to thank Wootware again for sending over the 1080 EXOC from Galax. If you're looking to get a Galax GPU, any of the new Pascal or Polaris graphics cards, or anything else that your computer might need, Wootware has you covered with fantastic prices on their products, deep selection, and a customer service team that is quick to care and help. So if you're looking to upgrade your PC, head on over to wootware.co.za to woot up your system. The link is in the video description. And that wraps it up for this review on the Galax GTX 1080 EXOC graphics card. Like this video if you found it helpful at all. Dislike it if you disagree with me or my conclusions. You can subscribe to stay up to date on all of my tech related content. And please forgive me if I sound a little different in this video. I had my tonsils removed last week, but I wanted to get this review done. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.